What's up everyone, it's Phil here, and I'm trying something new in the new year. I'm going to be putting myself in the videos, not just hiding behind the camera for a change. If you haven't guessed yet, we're here at the Bellagio. We're going to play some 2-5. They got a ton of tables going. It should be a lot of fun. Let's go play some poker.
It's about an hour into the session and we haven't got anything going yet, but if you smash that like button, I have a feeling it's about to change. We open pocket nines to 15 from early position and get called by the big blind. The flop is a favorable one, coming down 6 of diamonds, 9 of spades, ace of clubs. The big blind checks and we continue for 25 and she calls. The turn is another 9. She checks again and I can't bet too large here since the 9 is better for her range, so I put out a bet of 50. She decides 50 isn't enough and raises to 150. Is there a better feeling than getting check raised with the nuts? There's nothing for us to do here but call. The river is a jack and she bets 200, basically putting me all in. I put the rest in there. She calls and is disgusted to see the quads and immediately goes to put her name on the table change list. Hard to say what she had there, but from her reaction, I wouldn't be shocked if she flopped the set too. Back from break, and you can see I'm experimenting with some new camera angles and gear. Let me know what you think of the new setup in the comments below. We have 2 early position limpers when a euro on the button bumps it up to 25. We look down at ace queen of spades in the big blind. I'm a little suspicious of one of the limpers and don't mind playing this one multi-way, so decide on a call this time. The under the gun limper calls and the other folds. The flop is king 10-3 with 2 diamonds. I check, under the gun checks, and the button checks it back. The turn is the 9 of clubs, putting a second flush draw out there. When the button checks back on the flop, I'm not too worried about him having much of anything, so I put out 45. Under the gun folds, and the button folds too, and we take it down. The cutoff, a fun player, limps, and we come along on the button with jack 10 off. The small blind calls and the big blind checks, so we're 4 ways to the flop. It comes down jack, 7, 3, rainbow. The small blind and big blind check and the cutoff bets 20. We call and the blinds get out of the way. The turn is the 9 of clubs, putting a flush draw out there. The cutoff bets 45 and we call with our pair plus gut shot. The river is the queen of clubs, completing the flush. He checks it over to me and I don't see any point in turning our hand into a bluff. I check it back and he turns over 10-8 off for the straight. After missing every flop for a couple hours or seeing everyone else fold pre when we actually have a hand, the tilt might be creeping in a bit. I open pocket nines under the gun and the big blind, our fun friend, raises to 50. Big blind raises from a fun player are usually a very strong range, something like queens plus and ace king, but we're getting the right price to set mine and come along. The flop is not terrible, queen 7-3 rainbow. I'm feeling a bit better about my 9s when he checks, and I check it back. The turn 8 doesn't change anything, so when he bets 65, we have an easy call. The river is another blank 5, and now he bets 120. We're getting a good price, and I felt like he isn't checking an overpair too often on this flop. I know it's fishy to just put someone on ace king, but his 3-bet pre-check flop range does have a chunk of ace kings in there. I toss him the call, and he looks miserable to show me pocket aces. Just a few hands later, we open king queen of clubs in early position, and the big blind, a new player at the table, raises to 80. We're only sitting on around 450 and the raise is on the bigger size, but I don't think we can fold king queen suited in position and call. The flop is 4-4-3 with 2 spades and a club. When he checks, I discount some of his strong hands since I thought they'd want to keep betting on this wetter board, and I check back to see what happens on the turn. It's the 9 of clubs, and now he bets 80. I was expecting a bigger bet with his value hands, so this felt a little weak to me. I know GTO is only calling with draws like this in position, but I think I let the tilt get to me and convinced myself I had some fold equity. I put in the rest of my chips and got snap called, which is never fun. The river 10 of spades doesn't help. I tell him I missed my draw. He doesn't respond, so I flip over my cards and he slowly turns over pocket aces. I can honestly say it's been a little while since I've let the tilt get to me like that, but poker is just a hard game when you aren't running great. If you're making plays that you know you shouldn't, it's time to call it a night. I know some of you love the GTO breakdowns and some of you not as much, so I'm moving them all to the end of the vlog now. Also, if you have any hands you want me to run through the wizard, comment them below. I'm going to start doing a weekly live stream GTO study session where we dig into some interesting spots. Let's take a look at these last two hands in GTO Wizard. Nines are a standard open, but facing the 3-bet, we only play them about half the time, mixing in some raises. I'm probably calling too often here and was surprised to see even jacks finding the occasional fold. The big blind is betting 75% of the time on this flop, and as I expected, the overpairs are nearly pure bets. There is a lot of ace high in that checking range, so at least I have the right idea about what a range should look like here. After the big blind checks, we're betting about 60% of the time, with nines mixing between betting or calling. On the turn 8, the big blind is mostly checking again. Facing the half pot bet, we're calling 66% of the time, finding the occasional raise with a set or 2 pair, balancing with some pair plus draw type hands. On the river 5, the big blind is betting about 2/3 of the time, preferring a 60% pot sizing with top pair or better for value. King highs are the main bluffing hand, and it looks like GTO gives up with some ace highs. Facing this bet, our nines are mainly indifferent to calling or folding. The EV is the same between either option, so this will be a player dependent spot. If we think they are not bluffing enough, it becomes a fold, and if they are bluffing too much, it's a call. Looks like this was a generally GTO approved line, but I probably could have gotten away from it on the river. Next up, we have the king-queen hand, and as I already said earlier, this one felt a bit punty. Let's see how bad it was. Once again, a standard open, and facing the big blind raise, this one is a pure call. On the 4-4-3 two-spade flop, the big blind is continuing about 50% of the time. You can see the aces, kings, and queens really prefer betting here, and hands like ace-king, king-queen, and queen-jack are more of the checking range. When he checks the flop, we're betting about 2/3 of the time, basically across the board. We can see that the EV is the same between betting and checking with our king-queen of clubs. On the turn 9 of clubs, the big blind is supposed to be checking 80% of the time, and going with an overbet when it does choose to bet, pushing that overpair equity. When he bets half pot, we are mainly calling with our range and rarely raising. With the king-queen of clubs, as expected, this is basically a pure call. Jamming all in is a negative EV of 2.88, confirming this was a bit of a punt. It theoretically does generate some folds, but it's just increasing our variance unnecessarily when we can call and see the river. Let's say we call and the river is a total blank like an offsuit 10. Now if he checks again, we can turn some of our missed draws into a bluff. I think part of the reason I jammed turn is because I wasn't sure if I could bluff if I missed on the river, and I really don't like giving up with king high. Still, I'd rather be too aggressive than not aggressive enough, so I'm not beating myself up over this one too much. Thank you to everyone who made it to the end of the vlog. I hope you enjoyed the new format, and I'm really excited to put out lots of content this year. Good luck at the tables, and I'll see you next week.